Environmental Law Center, Trip Pollard develops and leads the organizational efforts to promote cleaner, more equitable transportation and smarter growth. Trip has become one of Virginia's most effective advocates for transportation electrification. When state lawmakers are in session, you're likely to see him walking in the halls of the General Assembly, talking with Virginia's lawmakers about policies that will help move the state forward. Today, he'll be talking about some of the things that other states have done to move EV adoption forward and where Virginia stands in policy spectrum. Please help me welcome Trip Pollard.
So I know for those of you who come to this event, you know much of this already, but I did want to just give a little context because I think it's important when we do talk about the policies, you know, is why are we doing this, why are we trying to promote transportation electrification and cleaner cars, and then I'm going to talk some about where we are now and some of the alternatives going forward. So this is a quote from an unusual source, the United States Department of Transportation, who acknowledged that our historical approach to transportation management is creating an energy-intensive system depending on carbon-based fuels and automobiles. So that's definitely where we are, as you all know. And the consequences of this very auto-centric, very fossil fuel-centric transportation system are enormous. I won't go into details about this, but the environmental impacts are almost every serious environmental problem that's tied to our transportation system, especially air and water pollution, climate. And those have incredible health impacts, particulate matter and ozone, air pollution. Consumer impacts, very expensive, own and drive, be auto dependent. Economic impacts, national security, import gasoline, and then the equity impacts, very expensive to have that system where we have to drive in most places for pretty much everywhere. And one of the most significant reasons why I would do this is the environmental impacts. And the fact that transportation is by far the number one source of carbon pollution in Virginia. It's almost half of our carbon pollution is on transportation. Nationwide, it's the largest source, if not. The many benefits of electric vehicles, you can just kind of flip the impacts of fossil fuel dependence. There are enormous environmental health benefits, national security, and just one statistic that one of the biggest impacts. But the greenhouse gas emissions, we hear a lot sometimes, especially in policy discussions with Assembly, I hear a lot. Are EVs really clean if you look at where's the power come from? Well, in Virginia, on average, there are about a quarter of emissions, even when you count for electricity generation. So, enormously cleaner and getting cleaner all the time. Advocating for transportation electrification and policies promoted for these is to also provide other cleaner transportation options. Talking about cars this morning, but really every mode of transportation needs to electrify, and we put a lot more money into alternative modes. Everyone can afford a car, and for accessibility and equity, we really need a much more balanced transportation program, not just focusing on electrification, but electrification is absolutely a cornerstone of how to transform our transportation system to have a more equitable transportation system. So I do a lot of work with the Southern Environmental Law Center on other modes of transportation, promoting transit and rail, locally, regionally, and at the state level, as well as by the cleanest transportation source of all. But EVs is a big part of my work, and electrification. So where are we now? Registration of EVs has significantly begun to increase in Virginia in recent years. 2023 data is not finalized completely, and is definitely continuing its upward trend. Despite many of the headlines you see, EV sales continuing to grow. And charging infrastructure, which obviously we hear a lot about, and is one of the main reasons for hesitancy to move people to buy EVs. In Virginia, there's been a significant increase in public charging stations in the last few years. Most charging is still roughly 90% done at home, like those EV owners. But because of concern about travel, range anxiety, and many people who are considering EVs, it's really important to build out that public infrastructure. Should we talk some about some of the current policies? Where are we now in Virginia? I'm going to talk about state, a little bit about federal. There are a number of federal programs, policies. I'm not going to go into those as much, except to touch on some that Virginia's actually implemented, where it's up to our state officials. And then I'll talk a little bit about local. And this slide is actually from a report that I wrote. There are copies of it. There's one came out earlier this year looking at transportation electrification, where are we in Virginia, what are the benefits, what are some of the policy steps. In terms of the policies in Virginia, probably the single most important policy that the General Assembly has adopted are clean car standards. Maybe you're familiar with this, you may have heard about it. Clean car standards under the Federal Clean Air Act, tailpipe pollution is regulated by EPA. They set national emission standards. The Clean Air Act also gives California the unique ability to set up more protected standards. And once they set that standard, other states can adopt it, but they can't adopt their own standard, contrary to what you might have heard from. So Virginia has two choices. We either go with the federal tailpipe standard, or we adopt a more protected state. And Virginia General Assembly adopted a more protected standard. Under the Clean Air Act, which adopted the wait a little while to bring effects, manufacturers can adapt. And it just took effect this year. And it requires an increasing amount of zero-emission vehicles to be sold in Virginia each year. It also applies to gas fuel vehicles. So you have to have lower and lower emission fossil fuel vehicles to live for sale in Virginia as well. So it's a really powerful tool to actually do more than anything Virginia has done in one step to reduce carbon pollution and other forms of air pollution. Unfortunately, there have been many attempts to scrap it ever since we passed it. 3 sessions in a row have been bills to repeal it. We successfully defeated all of those, and the government at AG continually said, what do we do about it? The General Assembly has to repeal it. They kept introducing repeal bills. They didn't pass. But then in the summer, they continually changed their mind after failing for the 3rd time to repeal it. And the governor, as unilaterally said, he's scrapping these standards. We think that's illegal. There's a lot more still to come with this. But it's thrown this policy in great disarray. So it is going to affect the amount of electric vehicles that get delivered for sale in Virginia. One of the things that helped us pass this was the evidence that a whole lot of folks are going to other states, other EVs, because there's just not the stock here. Primarily Maryland, because they are a 10-car state. So the manufacturers to meet this requirement, that's right, and to deliver the cleaner cars to the cleaner car states. So stay tuned on that. Other policy, probably one of the most significant steps we could take in Virginia would be purchase rebates. The same year that we passed the Clean Car Statute, the General Assembly did pass the governor's own rebate bill. And it's one of the better ones in the entire country. It has provisions equity, it's well set up. But the General Assembly has never put a penny into it. So it's on the books, but funding is just not there. So in terms of state policy, this is something we have partners have been working on year after year trying to get this money. Try to end the session. Even when we pass the General Assembly, we're trying to get it. It's going to be hard. Obviously, there are federal rebates in the Inflation Reduction Act. That's obviously helped the market for EVs, but Virginia still does not have a rebate system. So that's a huge gap. Other states have done huge policy gap that Virginia needs to fill. And Virginia also has some disincentives for EV ownership. I'd say we countered the EV fee, which was added a few years ago, calibrated to the gas tax, the average vehicle, the average miles driven paid annually. It's only 85% of that, so we got a slight recognition of the benefit of EVs when this formula was put in, but very slight. It's not nearly as onerous as some states have adopted, but it's still a disincentive, and we'd love to get rid of it. Again, focus more on cars, but again, it's not just cars. There are a lot of policies, not much again at the state level, but mainly at the federal level, to fund public transit buses, school buses, and e-bikes now are starting to pop up, not at the federal level, but some metro areas starting to put some funding into. Virginia does not have money for these, and in fact, last session, we had a bill that we put some money just into assisting transit agencies to plan for the transition to electrification, and that bill passed, and we don't remember whether we need things like that. Again, federal funding is more where the action is here, but some of the localities and regions have also stepped up and funded electric school buses and transit buses. So making some progress on other vehicles as well. Fleet purchases is another area of policies. We were able to get through a bill a couple of years ago that actually requires the state, when making purchases, to look at the total cost of a vehicle, not just the upfront purchase, but to factor in the fact that EVs are cheaper over time. Have to say this administration has not been too diligent about enforcing this, but it's on books and it is an avenue, and we're still trying to push that. Local fleet purchase, some localities have begun to move this direction as well, and make a lot of progress on this front. And then back to charging infrastructure. So in terms of, I mentioned the increase in public chargers in Virginia, but in terms of the policies, there have been a couple of bills that passed the General Assembly to open up charging, like in parks in some areas. But state funding for charging has not gone through the General Assembly. We've passed a bunch of amendments the last couple of years, especially focused on rural area charging. The map I showed quickly a little while ago, I don't know if you noticed the dots, but they're certainly concentrated in only a few areas of the state. And we've got the federal money that's flowing through Virginia, especially the netting money. So Virginia's some of the first public chargers were funded from the VW emission cheating scandal settlement money. But now we've got a much bigger slug of money, $106 million for charging under the netting program. There's another program for charging fuel infrastructure, that's a discretionary program. So the netting program, Virginia gets that money, period. And VDOT's administering it. The CFI money, you have to apply for it, and the state can, localities can. Virginia has not been successful so far in getting some of that $2.5 billion, but there are more rounds to come. Just a quick thing, this is the first phase of what Virginia is doing with its netting money. It's breaking it up under federal law. The first phase is supposed to be along interstate corridors. So that's phase 1A. They've actually got the awards that have been approved and negotiating contracts. They haven't been built yet. But that's where you'll be seeing them around the state. Phase 1B adds some of the state maps, 29. The bids are in those, but the awards haven't been made yet. So, and then phase 2 come after that. That's going to go beyond interstates into communities. But we still think we need a rural charging bill and getting it at areas that don't have charging, and we'll be introducing that again in this session. There's a lot of momentum for change. So Virginia, kind of goes to the theme of this policy going through kind of quickly is we've passed some things, we really haven't put our money where our mouth is. We've started down the path, but really we haven't adopted much in the way of the policies that we need to. But there's huge public support, obviously, for clean air, clean water, clean transportation. It's a key part of the messaging, obviously, for EVs, increased awareness, specifically of the impact of climate pollution of transportation, and there are just abundant opportunities to have good policies. So I'll wrap up by just touching on, there's a host of potential policies, but I just wanted to mention some. At the state level, number one, keep clean car standards. We'll keep fighting that again. Actually fund the EV purchase incentives. It's on the books, it's ready to go. To get that fleet bill to be more effective, I think we need to set specific targets and that would really help. Right now, you are supposed to consider the overall total cost of ownership. There's just too much wiggle room. Reducing and eliminating the EV fee, funding running charters, especially in rural and disadvantaged communities. Making new development EV ready, that's getting into more controversial in this section, but especially for multifamily apartments and the like, it's far cheaper and more efficient to do it as it's being built than to try to retrofit it. And some states have begun to do that. And then the state has authority over utility policies, especially getting more favorable time of use and other rates for charging. I mentioned this being focused on the state level. Localities, there's a lot they can do as well, and some localities in the area have begun to move. And again, there's many more options in this, but some of the things is first is just having a plan. Having a decent EV plan, thinking this through, looking at your options. Fleet purchases are something that there's clearly no authority to do, funding of chargers. Another thing that the guys clearly have authority over is land use and zoning, so updating zoning codes to clarify charging stations permitted by right. And some of the guys have begun to provide incentive zoning for EV-ready development, so providing extra density bonus for multifamily apartment dwelling if you provide the charger. And then expedited streamlining or permitting. Those are all things that are pretty clearly in local authority. For those of you who don't know Virginia, it's kind of a funny state in terms of local authority and state-local relations. I won't get into that. But localities, rightly so, have to be a little cautious about not getting too far ahead of their authority granted to them by the state. But there's a whole host of things localities can do. There's a whole host of things the state can do.